Will Rogue and Cyclops be able to decide the fate of Professor X, or will Dr. Ellis's psychic weapon end up destroying them both first? Well, let's hop into the pages of Uncanny X-Men issue number 8, the grand finale to the Raid on GRAYMALKIN crossover event, and find out what happens next together, shall we? So then, at the end of the last issue, we saw that Scurvy, Dr. Ellis's head scientist, was actually a secret mutant. Moreover than that, he was an incredibly powerful psychic with abilities that rivaled even Xavier's himself. In this issue, we actually get a little snapshot of Scurvy's origin. Apparently, he first met Ellis when he was, get this, a guest on her anti-mutant podcast. No, really, I'm not making that up, that's for real. On one hand, I'd say that's ridiculous. On the other hand, I would say it's about damn time someone finally held us podcasters responsible for all the evils we've done to the world. Now, even though Ellis hates mutants, it didn't stop her from sleeping with Scurvy and completely wrapping him around her finger. We also discovered that his amazing psychic abilities age him every time he uses them, meaning that he is actually a much younger man than he looks. Scurvy and Professor Xavier are doing the whole battle in the mind's eye thing that psychic characters love to do in X-Men stories. Well, on the outside, Rogue is able to free herself just long enough to try and plan her next course of action. She knows she's not going to be able to save her team from mind control and escape this place without help, and because of that, she ends up very literally slapping some sense into Scott so that they can both rejoin the battle. Though they both have to take a minute to remind themselves, hey, are we on the same team right now? It's hard to keep this straight at the moment. Now, you would think the rest of the story would be about Rogue and Cyclops' teams rallying together, putting their differences aside, and fighting together for a greater good, only that's not what happens with this final issue of this crossover at all. Instead, it completely goes off the rails with something completely different. You see, it's during their psychic battle, Scurvy ends up dropping a major new lore bomb on Xavier, saying that they're not so different from each other, and the reason that they are both such amazingly powerful psychics is because they are part of a subsect of mutantdom called the Avians. According to Scurvy, there's actually 5 Avians in total, and we've actually already met the third one, Harvey X, that dying boy, who touched Rogue and gave her the amazing ability of foresight for a short amount of time. And hey, what was it that killed Harvey X despite his amazing avian status? Well, a brainstem tumor. Turns out all the Avians have it, including Xavier. He just didn't know about it until right now. Okay, so that is a hell of a lot to take in, but how do Cyclops and Rogue end up saving their teams from Scurvy's mind control? Well, they don't have to. Xavier just kind of does it for them. Rogue's new team of young X-Men end up reuniting with each other, and it's all very sweet. Wolverine and Magic have some pithy back and forths. But yeah, they built it up like they were going to have to do some sort of amazing maneuvering, but in the end, they just don't have to. Dr. Ellis refuses to let the two teams escape, though, and ends up showing up with an entire armed battalion. The two different X-Men teams don't back down now, as finally Cyclops and Rogue are all on the same page, and they say that if Ellis knows what's good for her, she better back down right now, before this all ends up getting very ugly. I mean, hey, if her psychic super weapon couldn't stop them, what's she gonna do with just a couple assault rifles? Well, as it turns out, Scurvy was never actually Dr. Ellis's real ace in the hole. Her real ace in the hole, we find out, is a series of incredibly deadly satellites circling the planet capable of nuking any target of Ellis's choice from orbit, and she already has our two X-Men team's current bases of operations in her crosshairs, both in Alaska and Louisiana, meaning that unless the mutants want to try her and risk some mutually assured destruction, it looks like this Raid on GRAYMALKIN incident is going to end in one giant stalemate for everyone. Rogue and Cyclops will be allowed to leave with the people who were initially kidnapped, but Xavier will be forced to stay behind. And because literally the debate over whether or not Xavier should come or go was basically the only conflict worth having in this story, you can understand my disappointment when Xavier out of the blue basically goes, you know what? I think I should stay. I did lots of bad things. I should really go into the corner and think about what I've done. Also, you know, he probably wants to learn more about this avian stuff, and he's already going to be the star of the next big X-Men event, X-Manhunt, coming soon. So yeah, Xavier Xavier stays. Also, despite seemingly having dealt with their animosities and no longer having an evil psychic controlling their emotions, the second that Cyclops and Rogue make it out of GRAYMALKIN, they all end up fighting each other all over again. Again, Rogue thinking that they should have saved Xavier, Cyclops thinking that Xavier should rot. Scott is also mad at Rogue for bringing such young, untested mutants into the field, and Anne-Marie is mad at Scott for aligning himself with Magneto. And the worst part of all is that that's just where the comic ends. It peters out with everyone still mad at each other, and no real progress being made on either side. Oh no, wait, I'm wrong. There's one last little stinger too, where we discover that Dr. Ellis's real ultimate ace in the hole wasn't scurvy, and it wasn't the satellites, it was actually the mysterious inmate X, who we learn is the real first Avian. You know, whatever the hell that actually means, as we just found out what the Avians were just a few pages ago. And so that was Uncanny X-Men issue number 8, and ooh boy was this one disappointing. In fact, I think I like this finale less and less the more I think about it. Just a limp and flaccid conclusion to a story that was already having a hard time hooking me with its tired hero versus hero setup. The worst part though is that nothing is really accomplished by the end of this story. Even the somewhat interesting moral debate over the fate of Xavier just gets kicked down the road for the next big event. It's also kinda shocking how much of the page real estate in this issue is taken up by explaining Scurvy's origins and these Avians and what it could all possibly mean, which has to be indicative of some of the worst event writing I have ever seen. You know, the feeling when you're reading something in a comic and you're like, oh well, this stopped being a story completely and just started being a commercial for another story I could maybe read in the future. This is a brand new concept that they have already failed to sell me on. I don't care who the Avians are, I don't care who the first Avian is, I don't care why they're called that and what it might have to do with birds, I don't care at all. It's also a pretty bad omen too that this is the first big From Ashes post-Krakoa era crossover X-Men story and that it's just so thoroughly disappointing. Say what you want about the last big events we had, Sins of Sinister, X of Swords, etc, but those were real big creative go for broke ideas, that even if they weren't your own particular cup of tea, you had to respect the audacity behind them, right? My sincere hope is that this will all end up just being an unfortunate speed bump, and when everything is said and done, we can go back to our regularly scheduled X-Men programming, because man, I was really loving Uncanny X-Men before this story. Overall, I would give this one a 4.5 out of 10. This one really hurt me in a way I was not expecting. Hey there everyone, it's your pal Cape Joel again, and if you're seeing my face right now, that means you watched to the end of the video, and I'll always be grateful for that. Retention helps in this crazy YouTube game, and so does becoming a patron. If you head on down to the description, you can find a link to my Patreon page. Recently just redid all the tiers, a lot of cool stuff offering up there, exclusive commentaries, exclusive polls, behind the scenes concept art for Capes and Quest, that's the brand new D&D show I've started soon. Never been a better time to become a patron. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month and help the channel grow and, you know, help me continue to deliver content like what you just saw. So I want to thank you all, and I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.